There wasn't some big dramatic moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was more like little things stacking up over time, until eventually I looked around and realized my relationship wasn't what I thought it was. I'm Patrick, 35M. I work a normal job, live a pretty normal life, and about a year ago I started dating a woman named Jen, 31F. She is outgoing, very social, and is the kind of person who always has plans on the weekend. She's got that personality that people gravitate towards pretty quickly. When we first started dating, I actually loved that about her, and was one of her best qualities. She had energy, confidence. She wasn't shy about being herself, and honestly, after a couple relationships where things felt kind of dull, that was refreshing. The first few months with Jen were easy. We'd grab dinner after work, watch movies, go out with friends. Nothing complicated. The relationship moved at a pretty normal pace. But there was something about Jen that I noticed early on. She really cared about social media. Now, I know that probably sounds normal in 2026. Everybody uses Instagram, TikTok, whatever. I'm not one of those guys who thinks social media itself is the problem. But for Jen, it wasn't just something she used. It was something she watched constantly. I'd be sitting next to her on the couch and she'd post a picture, then immediately start refreshing the app, likes going up, comments rolling in, refresh, refresh, refresh again. At first, I just thought she was bored, but after a while I realized she wasn't bored, she was tracking it like it was a scoreboard. And honestly, I didn't really say anything about it. I figured that was just part of her personality. Some people enjoy that kind of attention online. It wasn't my thing, but it didn't seem like a big deal. At least, not yet. The shift happened gradually. It started with her pictures. Not that they were inappropriate at first, but the style of them started changing. Early on, it was normal stuff. Photos with friends, pictures of food, random selfies. But over time, the pictures became more intentional. Better lighting, better angles, outfits that felt less casual and more like they were picked specifically for the camera. And again, I'm not saying someone can't look good in photos. That's not the issue. The issue was what started happening underneath those photos, the comments. I remember the first time I actually stopped and read them. I was sitting next to Jen while she was scrolling through one of her posts, and I saw a comment pop up. Some guy wrote, "Your boyfriend is a lucky man." Fair enough, that one was harmless. But then another one, "Wow, you're unreal." Then another, "Single?" Then another, "Whoever is dating you better lock that down." And these weren't friends of hers. These were random guys she didn't know. I asked her about it casually one night. I said, "Do you know most of these people commenting on your posts?" She barely looked up from her phone and said, "No, just followers." Followers? So I said, "So they're just random dudes?" She shrugged. "Pretty much." Now, here's the part that caught my attention. She wasn't ignoring them. She was liking them, sometimes replying with little heart emojis or laughing emojis. And I remember asking her one simple question. I said, "Why do you respond to them?" She looked at me like I'd just asked something incredibly stupid. It's engagement. Engagement. That word again. Like this was some kind of content strategy. So I laughed and said, "You're not a brand, Jen." And she goes, "Everybody's a brand now." I thought she was joking. Turns out she wasn't. Over the next few weeks, the posts started becoming more revealing. Not in a way where you could outright say something was inappropriate, but definitely in a way that you knew exactly what kind of attention it was going to attract. The kind of pictures where the pose isn't accidental, the kind where the camera angle is very deliberate, and the comments started reflecting that. More compliments, more flirting, more random guys suddenly appearing in her comment section, and once again, she was engaging with them. Now, here's where I think a lot of guys make a mistake. They either explode immediately or they stay silent forever. I tried something different. I asked questions. One night we were cooking dinner together and I just casually said, "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Sure." I said, "Why do you care so much about the attention you get online?" She immediately pushed back, "I don't care that much." And I said, "You kind of do, though." She laughs a little and says, "Everyone likes compliments, Patrick." Fair enough, but then I asked the question that really mattered. I asked, "Would you be okay if I was posting pictures online and random women were flirting with me in the comments?" She paused, just for a second. Then she said, "That's different." And that's when I knew we were about to have a real conversation. I said, "Why is it different?" She shrugged. "Because guys are creeps." That was her explanation. Guys are creeps. So apparently, if guys flirt with her online, it's harmless. But if women flirted with me online, that would somehow be a problem. That logic didn't make sense to me. But again, I didn't turn it into an argument. I just let it sit there. Because something about the way she said it felt dismissive, like my perspective didn't matter. And for a while, I tried to ignore it. I really did. But then something happened that changed how I looked at everything. One Friday night, we were out with friends at a bar. Just a normal night. Jen steps away to go to the restroom and leaves her phone sitting on the table. I wasn't snooping, I wasn't going through it, but her phone lights up and a message preview pops up. Instagram DM from a guy named Alex. And the preview says, "Still thinking about that picture you posted earlier." It had a whole thread under it, which means they'd been talking before. When she came back to the table, I asked her about it. I said, "Who's Alex?" She looked at me like she was trying to remember. "Oh, just someone from Instagram." And I said, "You talk to him a lot?" She shrugs. "Not really." Now, I'm not stupid. If the message thread is already there, that means there's been conversations. So I asked another question. "What do you guys talk about?" And immediately she gets defensive. "Patrick, why are you interrogating me?" I said, "I'm not interrogating you, I'm asking." She rolls her eyes and says something that I think a lot of guys have heard before. "You're being insecure." And just like that, the conversation shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't about the messages, it wasn't about the attention, it wasn't about the pictures. It was about me, my insecurity, my supposed control issues. She starts saying things like, "You don't trust me. You're trying to control what I post. You're making something out of nothing." And I remember sitting there thinking, wait a second, I didn't accuse her of cheating. I didn't tell her what she could or couldn't post. All I did was ask why she was entertaining outside validation into our relationship. But apparently, that question alone was enough to label me as insecure. And the more I thought about it, the stranger it felt. Because respect in a relationship shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't require debate. If someone is in a committed relationship, there should be certain boundaries that are just understood. You don't flirt with other people. You don't encourage attention that disrespects your partner. You don't create situations that make your partner look stupid. But the way Jen talked about it, those boundaries didn't exist. And the more we talked about it, the more obvious it became that we were living in two completely different realities. To her, social media attention was harmless. To me, it felt like she was inviting outside validation into our relationship. And here's the thing that really bothered me. It wasn't the pictures themselves. It wasn't even the comments. It was how quickly she dismissed my concerns, like they didn't matter, like I was crazy for even noticing. Because the moment I brought it up, the label came out. Insecure. It's amazing how powerful that word is. It immediately puts the other person on defense. It shuts down the conversation. Because now, instead of talking about behavior, you're talking about feelings. Your feelings.